situation where you find that a party look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
Because I have said that.
All right, so welcome back and thank you for staying with us. It's time for the newspaper review. Now let's take a look at what the front page of the dailies today is actually saying. We'll begin with Daily Trust newspaper, and we have the lead story here that says 24 hours to go. How Atiku, Tinubu, Obi, Kwankwaso will share 87 million votes. We have writers here that says it's too close to call. Experts say, and then ex-VP Ashiwaju for epic battle, popularity test for former Anambra governor. And we have more stories below the lead story here. Go out and vote, Biden charges Nigerians. Details on page 5. Election results must reflect people's will, says ECOWAS observers. Man jailed 1 year for insulting dad. And you can find details of that story on page 17. On the footnotes there, we have on elections, 15 killed in Kano, Enugu, Ebonyi violence. At the top of the page there, still on 1 day to go, IGP orders air surveillance in Lagos, deploys 27,000 cops. Ogun PDP demands DSS directors redeployment over riots. Core members reject INEC's posting to 3 Imo local government areas. And how digital surveillance threatens press freedom in Nigeria. Others. On page 20, there you find a story of Nigerian banks facing credit risk from regional expansion, and mastermind of Abuja-Kaduna train attack arrested, $5,000 recovered. These are some of the stories on Daily Trust newspaper.
And moving on to the Nigerian News Direct. 2023 elections, Buhari warns election saboteurs as world powers close mark Nigeria. US, Japan, UK orders demand respect for electoral laws. Nigerians at risk of cash inducement over Naira scarcity. Nigeria police force ban officers from escorting politicians to polling unit. 87.2 million PVCs collected, INEC. And US commits over $25 million to credible elections. You'll find there the picture of the vice president and his wife alongside the governor of Ogun State at the commissioning of witnessing the first landing of a plane at the domestic airports in Ogun State yesterday. We also have other stories above the nameplates. Polls, Oni warns youth against violence as political court groups attack residents. Ogun, Agro Cargo Airport record made in flight. And youth in Lagos declare support for Tinubu. And we also have another picture there of the Executive Vice Chairman, Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Communications Commission, Professor Umar Garbat Ambata, Honorable Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, Professor Isa Ali Ibrahim Pantami, and Chairman Governing Council of NCC, Professor Adeolu Akande, and Director General, National Information Technology Development Agency, Mr. Kashifu Abdullahi, at the inauguration of the committee for protecting cyberspace and ICT infrastructure at the NCC head office in Abuja yesterday. These are the major stories on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct.
All right, let's take a look at Leadership Friday. The lead story here says 7th presidential poll, 87.2 million voters decide Atiku, Tinubu, Obi, Kwankwaso, others fate tomorrow. Now we have writers here that says tension pervades the land over what promises to be an most intriguing poll. Citizens to elect 5th president since 1999. INEC insists on no PVC, no voting. And on Naira swap of PMB didn't overrule Supreme Court, says Malami. Buni empowers 100 NURTW members, 68,000 vulnerable persons. Why politicians are desperate to buy votes, says Igini. Mixed reactions in Southeast over Simon Ekpa's arrest. On page 22, we have Oshibajo inaugurates Ogun Cargo Airport, boards maiden flight. And these are some of the stories on Leadership Friday.
And away from the conventional papers, we have Nature News, looking at issues that borders on the environment. But in the major story here still dwells somewhat with politics. Nigeria holds general elections. New president will lead climate change campaign. And there you have pictures of the front runners, Rabiu Kwankwaso, Atiku Abubakar, Peter Obi, and Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. 25 million Nigerians may suffer food crisis by August 2023. That is according to the FAO. You find that story on page 5. African leaders to step up routine immunization. Athletes, officials divided over African Games postponement. You have that on page 21. And just below the name marks, we have flood 2023, 32 states, FCT at risk. This is coming from the federal government. And King Charles to co-write children's climate change book. FG begins dredging of Asa River to avert flooding in Kwara. And Nigeria needs foreign partnership to mitigate climate effects. And this is coming from the minister. These are the major stories on the front page of Nature News.
All right, let's move on to the Punch newspaper. From the top of the page, on polls, be careful or be peaceful, I beg your pardon. Biden urges Nigerians. Now 87.2 million PVCs collected. Lagos, Kano, Kaduna top list. We also have, beside the nameplates there, alleged crime. How Finnish police grilled released pro-Biafran agitator Ekpa. The lead story here says pre-election violence. Military, others begin raids on hoodlums' hideouts. 4 killed, 63 arrested, weapons recovered as thugs attack Kano NNPP supporters. Enugu PDP reps candidate, Imo APC, Labour Party chairman attacked, driver burned to death. We also have a federal government shortlist firms to audit NIPOST assets. Lagos motorists groan over multiple levies, and this is on page 4. And these are some of the stories you can find on the Punch newspaper.
We move on to the Nation newspaper this morning. Polls, all eyes on Tinubu, Atiku. Can Kwankwaso Obi spring a surprise? The paper is asking that this morning. And we have why Obi can't win by 36 LP state chairman. Adamawa LP governorship candidate defects to APC. And to other stories, Ogun Agro Cargo Airport records made in flight. Electoral processes kick off with hitches. Mix-up in media accreditation. And INEC considers shift of Enugu East senatorial polls. LP candidate, 5 others killed. These are the major stories on the front page of the Nation newspaper.
All right, let's quickly take a look at the Guardian newspaper. On Nigeria decides, which is the big story. Borders shut. INEC upbeat. Buhari in Daura as 87.2 million vote. We have writers that says Lagos, Kano lead in PVC collected. INEC clears air on alleged preloaded beavers. Abide by peace accord. Biden tells Tinubu, Atiku or be others. UN diplomatic community laud signing of peace pact. Meta to activate mechanism to fight fake news. NCC says ignore fraudulent messages of network shutdown. Situation room to NCC. Nigerians will hold you responsible if BVAS fails. MTN explains Telkom's network freeze during elections. And then at the top of the page there we have politicians may trick Nigerians with new naira for votes, says Yaga. Yaga Africa warns. Rivers APC petitions EU election observers. US International Criminal Court on rising insecurity. 4 killed, 63 arrested as rival parties' supporters clash in Kano. 10-year-old boy down with stroke, hole in the heart, needs 7 million naira for surgeries. And on the footnote there we have Naira redesign. Buhari hasn't breached Supreme Court order, Malami insists. And Nigerians go to poll amid hope. High stakes, huge expectations. These are some of the stories on The Guardian.
Moving on to this day newspaper, 87.2 million voters to decide a presidential race too close to call. And we have there as the riders, Biden US stands with Nigeria as it charts new paths to secure future. UK, Canada, Japan orders loud signing of peace accord. Lawan preaches peaceful post. Drum support for Tinubu. Sheikh Dahiru Bauchi endorses Atiku. Obaseki, Atiku best choice for Edo people. Urges them to reject same faith presidency. You have the picture there of the Metropolitan Archbishop of Lagos, Martins, Adewale Martins, the mother, the patriarch and former First Lady of Lagos, with her son, Femi Otedola, at the commissioning of the first building donated to the Augustine University in Ekpe. And we have other stories there. Billionaire philanthropist Otedola donates engineering faculty to Augustine University, lays foundation stone for Block 2 and 3, pledges to support varsity to become #1 center of excellence in Africa. And to other stories, Malami Buhari didn't breach Supreme Court order by banning old notes. Defense headquarters troop arrest mastermind of Kaduna Abuja train bombings. The military police vow to defend democracy at all cost. FG closes all land borders. And these are the major stories from the front page of this day newspaper this morning.
All right, we'll take a look at Nigerian Tribune. The lead story here says 87 million PVCs collected, says INEC. Lagos takes highest PVC. Northwest retains regional lead. Uncollected PVC stands at 6.2 million. All right, we also have more stories. Violence. Atiku raises the alarm over plans to scuttle election. You can find details on page 3. We also have troops arrest Abuja Kaduna train attack mastermind, 2 others in Kaduna on page 26. We will use maximum force against troublemakers, say security forces. 2 feared killed, 6 vehicles burnt as political thugs clash in Kano. And on page 3, hope suspends across Nigeria. And these are some of the stories on Nigerian Tribune.
And to Business Day this morning, economic turmoil weigh on Nigerians ahead of high-stake polls. To other stories, Nigeria's wheat production falters despite 12.9 billion budgeted in 8 years. Obi's candidate is set to change how Nigerians vote. And there's an explainer there on the 4 steps to cast your vote. You want to see that, you turn to page 2. Of course, there's also another analysis there. Nigerians vote in a consequential election. You'll find the details of the story on page 20. These are the major stories on the front page of Business Day.
All right, with that, we will be moving on to the analysis of the papers this morning. And we have our guest in the studio, Nuruddin Abdullah. He's the editor of 21st Century Chronicles. Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning. All right, so now every paper, seems to be carrying stories on the build-up of the elections, tomorrow. What are your expectations now, considering the fact that INEC has actually come out to say that 87 million people have collected their PVC so far?
Yes, it's very significant, bearing in mind the fact that we are moving. It's unlike like 2019, where a sitting president is contesting. But this one, after one full cycle of it is, the country is transiting. So it's just like 2015 and 2007. Obasanjo served his 2 terms, 2007, and there was keenly contested election, you remember, between Yar'Adua and Buhari at that time. Same thing in 2015, for instance, even though Jonathan was seeking for another term after the 2 years and 4 years of Yar'Adua. It is, if you look at what happened in the last 8 years, and this is the 5th time, like you rightly said, that Nigerians are going to poll after the return of democracy in 1999. So it's very significant. At least this is for the first time the country has a consistent. We are conducting election for the 5th consecutive time.
7th, actually.
7th, from 1999. This is the longest democratic rule that we have had, even pre and post independence, you understand. So it's very significant, and Nigerians now understand democracy, you understand, and they want to exercise their civic responsibility. Because those who were not, if you look at it by 1999, now 24 years. So from 2019, so many people born after we returned to democracy are now up voting age. And that explains the high number of youthful voters. And you know, with social media, you know, and there is now more civic engagement. Nigerians are more concerned about who represent them at whatever level. At the state level, I'm talking about the state assemblies, governors, national assembly, and even the president. So you can see this number 87. And unlike in the past, we have had more numbers than this. But it is at that time where the voter register was replete with names of Michael Jackson, Nelson Mandela, and what if you. But you believe this is real, you understand? The voter register has been cleaned. So we are not talking about some foreigners who had been deceived. We're talking about real voters. But what remains to be seen is whether the same number, or maybe if half of it will come and vote. You know, if you look at the history of political apathy, the disappointment, people come out street vote, but after 4 years or 8 years, you know, the expectations are not made. So they believe, what is the essence of even voting? You understand? So it's very significant, particularly in the political history of Nigerians, as many young Nigerians want to participate. Those who didn't vote in 2019 are now trying to vote. You understand that? Because they have come off edge. With social media, people want to be engaged. Yes, sir. Okay.
Interesting perspective. So a lot of interest around this election. I was listening to quite a number of analysts, and they were able to point to a number of factors. Now it appears about 4 of the regions have their own sons, you know, vying in for the coveted office, which perhaps may be responsible for that interest. But what I want us to talk about is what appears to also be a lot of interest from the international community. Barely 48 hours ago, we saw Blinken, the Secretary of State, you know, speaking to Nigerians directly. We saw the UK Foreign Minister and several other interests. 24 hours to the election, Biden is also speaking to Nigeria. How significant is this election to warrant the president of one of the strongest nations of the world, you know, directly speaking to Nigerians to go out and vote?
You know, like most of the newspapers say, it's a high-stake election. So the international committee cannot just look the other way. You know, we are 218 million. So they are interested in what happens here, particularly in terms of the peaceful conduct of the election, as well as the credible and transparent conduct of the elections. You understand? They are urging us, they are urging the authorities, we're talking about more importantly the INEC and security agencies, to ensure that the votes count. You understand? Because God forbid if there is any problem. The West African sub-region, how much is the population? How much is the population of our immediate neighbor, Niger Republic, particularly from the north? You understand? So if there is a problem, the entire sub-region, the entire continent will be affected. So that's the more reason why they are making this call, because they don't want to have one of the biggest humanitarian crises their own hands. And again, the credibility of the outcome. Nigeria is a leading nation, particularly in the sub-region and Africa as well. So they want Nigerians to have the president they want. You understand? Not an imposition And like the president is doing presently now, he's ensuring that all the processes
leading to the election
are transparent, credible, and fair. So we hope that the actual conduct will equally be that credible. And so whoever, there are 4 major candidates, whoever Nigerians decide to vote for, it is their own business.
Talking about that, before we move away from the whole talk around elections, we have seen early disturbing signs of violence. 15 killed in Kano, Enugu, and Ebonyi. I mean, we saw the senator from the Labour Party returning from campaign himself as a PA. And then yesterday it was clashes between the NNPP supporters and only God knows who. And we saw a number of vehicles burnt and all of that. Is this worrying for you, given that we have less than 24 hours to this exercise?
Yes, the murder of the Senate candidate in the Southeast, is not something new per se. If you look at the security ecosystem of the sub-region, I think more than a year ago, the unknown gunmen, the IPOP, and whatever, because they succeeded in gunning him down. There are various attempts before him. You remember Senator Ifan Yuba?
That's right.
Another,
CNPP chairman.
Yeah, exactly. So that of the Southeast, has been on the horizon for some time. So, but we thought and hope that the security agencies should be able to nip this thing in the bud and allow the Southeasterners to exercise their civic responsibility. But in the case of Kano, there are actually flash points. I think that's what many newspapers did not pay attention to. Kano is one. Oyo is one. You understand? Because if you look at the political tension, you look at the gladiators, they are all up in arms, trying to wrestle power from one to the. So that of Kano actually, and I hope the security agencies, are doing much, because we have the Konkosia people, the NNPP, we have the ruling party in the state who are trying to ensure that they maintain status quo, and then there are maybe PDP, which is not, but largely, if you look at what happened yesterday, despite it being, I think it's the fault of the security agencies. They banned these political rallies and procession. But what happened yesterday? One of the major, who is a presidential candidate, he said that no, he is not doing rally. He is returning home.
But from the incidents that happened, did it appear like the police were being neutral? Because the NNPP, as we understand, had written to the Commissioner of Police that they would have a rally. And then all of a sudden, the ruling party then wrote to them to say they would also have a rally. Wouldn't it have been fair if they had mentioned to them that they had already given consent to the initial person, given that they have had their own grand rally already in Kano?
Yeah, the spokesperson of the police command, I think Mr. Kiara was saying yesterday, all the 3 major political parties, the NNPP, APC, and PDP, wrote. When they saw that, and if you know Kano, last week, there was a rally by a political party in the metropolis. The rally was hijacked. Thugs brandishing all manner of local weapons were on rampage. Even crossing into people's homes, snatching all what they
could get.
They could. So according to the police, they say no, they should stop all the rallies. But this candidate was returning home, according to, and it's a procession. And that's why, the incident happened along the Zaria road. So the issue is this, maybe what we should have, the authorities, particularly the security agencies, apart from being neutral, they should be professional, and holding whoever is found wanting, particularly in the breakdown of law and order, because they all have talks.
True.
The DSS have uncovered some weapons and what have you, they said yesterday, in one of the buildings belonging to another political party. So all the parties, particularly in Kano, if you, to put it this way, are just ready to. So it's a very delicate situation. We hope that it won't degenerate into something else.
All right, so we'd actually love for you to share your thoughts on two stories. Now, one has to do with the Biafran agitator, Simon Ekpa, who was arrested and released in Finland, and the other has to do with the troops arresting the Abuja Kaduna train attack masterminds and two others in Kaduna.
Okay, I don't know the details behind the arrest of Simon Ekpa, who has been really a separatist. If you look at his Twitter handles, and agitating for the Biafran states, conflicting reports saying that the Igbo community in Finland, wrote and what. What I said is maybe what they should do is, if at all the man has broken the Finnish law, that is it. You still don't know he was behind the sit-at-home order and what have you. So I don't know, unless if you can establish beyond reasonable doubt that he's linked with the violence, the killings out of in the Southeast, very little can be done. Maybe Nigeria should take it at the diplomatic level. If you can convince the Finland, maybe I believe he has even dual citizenship, or if he has not even renounced his Nigerian
citizenship.
That's maybe what the DHQ say. Maybe it's a good development. So they arrested the mastermind almost 1 year after the deadly attack, and ever since the train has been just operating. They were operating 5 service, 5 from Abuja and 5 from Kaduna. Now it has been reduced to 1.
Oh, 1 now.
We are saying, well, before we completely go away, it's election day in less than 24 hours. All eyes are on us. The federal government is saying they are short borders. INEC is upbeat and all that. Do we really need to shut down our borders? It's beginning to sound like we are going on a self-destruct war. I mean, do we need to completely shut down everything to have an election in this country?
So I don't know the mentality of those in authorities. Those who will come out, who will come in and vote, or to interrupt the voting process, who will not come to Nigeria on the election day. They must have come much earlier. Strategize and whatever. It has to do, it's just a ritual. If you look at it, I think in the last previous elections, this announcement must have been made. So it's just for the bureaucrats to pick the template, change the date,
and announce it.
But almost of no effect.
Amazing.
So it's part of the bureaucratic ritual. It's just like declaring public holidays. Maulud, Xmas, Easter, and independence, democracy, and what have you.
Okay, now still talking about the polls, the nation actually carries a report that talks about, a mix-up in media accreditation, even, as the electoral process actually kicks off. Now, it also talks about INEC considering shift of Enugu East senatorial poll. Now, should people be worried about these particular mix-ups, especially when it comes to having a free and fair election?
Yes, I think they are the normal hitches. They are expected. I think it's not something that we should lose sleep over. They are shifting only 1 senatorial election out of 109. You get me? So it's not something we should lose sleep over. And again, the media accreditation, maybe it has to do with the bureaucratic. INEC is being run by civil servants, and the tension, particularly this time around. But aside, maybe journalists are now complaining as well, because because they are part of the stakeholders. But aside that, INEC has done fantastically well so far. And we can apparently see they are transparent, trying to be professional, and what have you. And even when they announced the number of PVCs collected, I say, wow, I don't know, it is this huge, you understand? Particularly with the new online registration. Most state governments, this election it will be very fantastic because, until you see the results.
Absolutely.
That's just it, you understand. Nigerians are interested, particularly in the last 8 years. A lot of disappointments, expectations, horribly dashed. So now they actually want to take back their country. I'm not using this for one. It's a campaign slogan for one of them.
You have registered a patent for that one, so you have the poetic license to use it.
You understand? So that is the interest. Look at the number of students, market women, particularly in the new registration that was done. So people are eager to effect some change at all the levels. So unlike the previous election where it is PDP, APC, now you will see we have 18 political parties. If you go to certain constituency states or even at the federal, you'll be surprised that these major parties are almost non-existent. One party that if they ask you to even know what is the acronym or where the party is located, you even know. So I think the democracy is growing. And now that 24 hours to the election, with all responsibility, 15 people, according to reports, were killed. Compare it to last election. Double or triple of that number were murdered. You remember, and at least there are no reports of drivers rejecting to drive the campaign vehicles of particular candidates or political parties. Apart from that of Kano, I think in the last 1 week, there are no reports of mass attack on a political structure or party. So I think we are growing, and we hope that maybe in the next couple of years, we won't be here talking about all these things. Maybe by that time we have even gone electronic. That will leave here and go and vote without any...
Interesting. Very quickly, in 30 seconds before we round up this section, the federal government is saying that 32 states plus the FCT are at risk of flood this year. In the mix of all of these elections, I think it's important that we highlight that, considering the amount of damage that we endured from last year's flood. What do you think the states and the federal government itself should be doing in the face of this warning?
Very little. They are doing very little. Maybe what the governors are doing maybe is to be stocking palliatives, macaroni, spaghetti, and whatever. Because up to now, most of the states have not changed their municipality design. Because that's the major problem. The majority of the flooding is caused by torrential rain. After Sunday, go to Kano, you see what happened in Kano yesterday. What has changed? Come to Kaduna, come to Kogi. When there is flooding, the normal states are affected. Because immediately we do that, maybe we'll just be talking, gathering macaroni, indomie, and whatever as palliatives, without actually addressing the main issues. So that's fundamentally the problem. Unless and until, like one of the newspapers said, you have to inculcate environment, climate change, and municipality authorities. Wrong officials compromising specifications and awarding all manner of things. You have building collapse, building on water channels, dumping, irresponsible dumping of refuse and whatever. These are the major causes. But unfortunately, the governors, the local government authority who should be responsible for this has been reduced to nothing. So they are just waiting to pack indomie and whatever, talking about palliatives instead of addressing the issue. And I hope that maybe the next crop of governors that we'll have in most of the states will address the main issues. They will address the issues, not the symptoms.
Not the palliative.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We've been talking to Nuruddin Abdallah, the editor, 21st Century Chronicle, who has taken us through his perspective on the issues that made the front pages of the paper this morning. It's a pleasure to have you this Friday.
You.
A pleasure.
I'm not sure where you are voting, but I hope you have the cash to take you there. And we hope to see you back in the studio, or even within the election period, as we'll be running a live studio, bringing you issues across the country. We hope somewhere in between you'll be able to join us and offer us perspective and help us scan the environment and bring us updates from wherever you will be performing your civic duty. That's it on the newspaper review this morning. We'll take a short breather. We'll return at the top of the hour with more from Daybreak. Please stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that a person look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
because I have said that